Hello, everybody. Welcome once again to AfriPost. I believe wherever you're watching us from, you are doing great. I want to take this opportunity, first of all, to thank you, each and every one of you, for always coming to this channel and watching our videos. And I also want to wish you a happy New Year 2024. May the year bring joy and good tidings. I came across this funny video, and surely this video, it's one of the things that I've been pushing in this channel, because as I've always told you, this channel is about championing for Africans and African Americans. One thing that happens is that blacks are people who are hated, and they are people who have received a lot of hate across the globe, and therefore the only thing that we need to do for one another is come together and support each other in every aspect. Now, there is this TikTok video that has been trending for some time. This white lady came out and made a TikTok video talking about black Americans. And one thing that she was emphasizing is that African Americans must understand that it is the whites who taught them the English language. You know, first of all, for me, it is a depiction of lack of understanding of history. So I want us to watch this video and then follow up with the reactions that people made to this video. Then let's talk about it later and give our comment about it. Take a listen.
AAVE was derived from white Southern language. Who do you think taught the African slaves English when they were brought to Southern America? Don't be mad at me, that's just the facts. You can't gatekeep something that's not yours.
Cite your sources. Cite your sources. I would like to see the empirical proof data that you have to back up this claim that you just made. Because there is no way that you sat here with your Lisa Kudrow looking ass and got on this internet and said that with a straight face, like you just knew for sure. So please, the burden of proof is on you now. Cite your sources. I want to see peer-reviewed articles. I want to see books that you've read. I want to see anything that you have to actually back up this claim, because there is no way that you actually believe what you're saying. This is rage farming at its finest. Cite your sources, Starla. Colloquially speaking, black people came up with AAVE, but I want you to provide the sources that would disprove what everybody else is saying. So you have 24 hours to respond. Cite your sources.
Taught. She said taught. Becky White Privilege said, who do you think taught the Africans English when they were brought over here? As if they took a cruise and just came over here. It's going to take a little bit more than imagination. We're going to have to engineer something and put that thing together. So, imagineer this.
Hello and welcome to your session. It's me, Miss Durbin. And let's go ahead and get started with our special words that we've been working. Toby, I need you to have a seat. Okay, it's time to, I will not call you Kunta. Master said your name was Toby, so I will be calling you Toby. No, tell me what your name is. No, it is, I will be having a conversation with Master. You're gonna get a beating. You're gonna get a beating. Okay, guys, okay, let's settle down. 1, 2, 3, eyes on me. Okay, so what are our special words that we've been working on? If you guys can get this, I have a surprise for you. There will be extra gristle and skin in your dinner tonight. Isn't that exciting? Okay, Bessie, what's the first word? Cotton, very good. The word is cotton. Someone wants some gristle and skin. Very good, Bessie. Skin and gristle for you. Okay, who can come up with the other word? Go ahead. Ezekiel? Okay, what's the word? Tobacco. Oh my God, that was so good. Extra skin and gristle for you too. You guys are doing such an excellent job.
Imagine that. All that big old pumpkin jack-o'-lantern head you have. And not one single brain cell. It takes 0.3 seconds and the regular cost of your internet provider to find out on Google that slaves weren't taught English at all. They pieced together words to put together their own version of English that had nothing to do with white people other than them being in their environment. I am astounded, astonished, befuddled, and flabbergasted how somebody who has access to so much information at their fingertips would sit there and say in 2023 with their whole chest that a slave owner who considers their slaves less than human would take the time to teach their slaves, their property, their animals, English. Make it make sense. As a proprietor of the English language, I am proud to say that it is my job and my duty and my pleasure to teach English Monday through Friday to young people in my classroom as an English teacher. But let me tell you something. I ain't got no problem talking just like this when I am not standing up teaching English as the standard language that it is. Furthermore, I sleep every night in my big ass house with my 20-foot vaulted ceilings in my bedroom, knowing that white people had nothing to do with the creation of one single word of AAVE. I hope them box braids take your hair out. Now get somewhere and sit down and go with God crispy. There's some AAVE for your ear hole.
From white Southern language. Who do you think taught the African slaves English when they were brought to...
Loud and very wrong. Like, the thing about AAVE is that it's a combination of several languages from several African countries located across Cote d'Ivoire with a splash of English, but it's actually mostly influenced by something called patois, which I don't expect a lot of white folk to know what patois is. Like, that's like telling them like a brand new, like, what is that? I don't know. I mean, I'm not even going to explain it to you. You should do your due diligence and do the research on your own. And if you go down south in the deep, deep south, when you're listening to AAVE that is heavily influenced by patois, you don't understand it. Like they're throwing patois slang in there. You don't understand it. And that's the thing. AAVE is heavily derived from patois, and I believe it's called Galigente, which was the culmination of all the languages of the African slaves in the South who were living on the plantations. And it created a brand new language. If white folk taught my ancestors English so well, how come the narrative since the end of slavery, even up until Jim Crow and even today, is that we illiterate, we don't know how to read, we don't know how to write, we don't know how to speak, and when we open our mouths and say something that impresses white people, oh, you're so eloquent, you're so educated, or maybe y'all are just loud and wrong and you don't understand culture. You know, that's the thing. AAVE to me as a black woman in America equals culture, my culture. As someone who is ADOS, my culture. So like, when you're telling me my culture makes me uneducated, my culture makes me sound, you know, uneloquent, I just think maybe you're the descendant of the colonizer who assimilated and took that away. Because anybody else who has common sense and empathy can see that AAVE was derived out of oppression, systemic oppression. I don't know if AAVE would have existed if y'all would have left us the fuck alone in Africa.
So AAVE started out as a form of English Creole, a Creole language, a combination of African indigenous languages and very, very broken British English. I say British English because the first 20 African slaves that were brought to the USA were brought here to Virginia, where I'm from, born and raised. I also lived in Louisiana for a bit, but that's a different story. You know, they were brought here to Virginia. Their enslavers did not have Southern accents. Their enslavers had British accents, most specifically Queen Elizabeth and King James I era British accents. The modern day Southern accent didn't really form until 3 to 4 generations later. So at least we didn't have the Southern accent until at least like mid to late 1700s. And by that point in time, the Creole language was already in full swing because the slaves were still switching back and forth between broken English and their indigenous African languages. Mind you, again, slaves were still being imported from Africa at this point, you know, so that's the way they communicated with each other, was that Creole language. Now, after a certain point in time, the enslavers wanted to be able to understand their slaves and be able to catch on to them if they were plotting to escape
or if they were plotting a revolt. So they made their slaves speak proper English. I say proper English in quotation marks because the slaves weren't allowed to learn how to read. So it was never proper English. So the creolized language got watered down into a dialect form of English that we know today. All right? So they didn't teach the slaves anything. They forced them to speak a certain way. So it's not a flex if a white person speaks AAVE and they're like, yeah, no, this came from white people. Like, no, this came from enslavers forcing the slaves to forget their indigenous language. So you preaching that came from white people, white Southern people, you're bragging about how enslavers forced and beat a language into people and didn't allow them to speak their native tongue. People that they forced to be here in the US. So this really isn't the flex that you think it is. The closest modern day equivalent we have to the Creole language that those slaves spoke is Gullah Geechee Creole. And if I walked up to you right now and started speaking Gullah Geechee, you wouldn't understand a word. You wouldn't understand a word. If I walk up to you and started speaking Louisiana Creole, because mind you, the enslavers in Louisiana spoke French and some Spanish, you still wouldn't understand a word. You wouldn't understand. If I went up to an old white Southern lady right now, start speaking Gullah Geechee to her, she wouldn't understand a word. So please tell me, if it's derived from white people, why can't y'all understand? If the root of AAVE is in a white person's language, why can y'all not understand it? Because it's not rooted in your language. You would know that if you actually spoke it.
Now, after watching that video, what comes out to me is that the lady lacks basic understanding of civic knowledge, because if she could say that they took the opportunity to teach African Americans their language, I agree with the guy who is saying that we did not come to America by our own choice. We were brought here by force, and therefore we had to learn and understand and use this language as it is. And then again, the amalgamation of African language and English, British English, brought the kind of English that is being spoken in the United States. Because you would understand, if you know, that the language, English language in Britain, different from the English language in America. Because there are certain slangs that are there are certain ways through which different things are pronounced and are called with different terms that really are because of the mixture of British English and African languages that were brought and they mixed there. So for me, the lady lacks some basic knowledge about history. And then this also gives us a little understanding of what white privilege is. Because when she has that opportunity to come on a TikTok, on a public platform, and say that she believes that the whites are superior to African Americans because of the fact that they understood the language before. This reminds me of a video that was made during the time when King Charles III visited Africa, and especially Kenya. There was this journalist, Michael Bolt, in Australia, who said that Africans, especially Kenyans, should be happy that British came to Africa because they brought civilization to Africa. They brought English language to Africa, and they brought development to Africa, which is not really the truth. These Western countries and these white people, they came to Africa and they have taken up many mineral resources from us. They have destroyed our culture. They have pit us against each other. They have destroyed the governance structure that was there in Africa. And they also took some of us away from African continent, and they took them to United States, to different European countries as slaves. This is something that we are not happy about. And therefore, if a white person who is privileged can come up and speak like Africans are meaningless, African Americans are not having that understanding of who they are, then this is wrong and it must be condemned as it is. I really agree with most speakers who have reacted to this video because they have really put that lady to her space. And I like the fact that some have even gone ahead to really school her about how the language, English language in the United States was formed and how it has been mixed up with some African languages to create what it is today. And that is what informs the difference that we find between the English in America and also English in Europe, especially in Britain. So that is it from me. I don't know what you think about this video, because for me, it really speaks of the kind of challenge that we are fighting. This channel is here to really open up on issues of race, because it is something that we must talk about. If we don't talk about it, we will keep silent about it, and then many people will continue suffering in silence, and that is not good. So let us come out, let us speak about this thing, let us open up, let's embrace each other. And that really calls for whites to accept that Africans are also human beings. They are people created equally by God, and they are people who are worthy of being considered in various spaces of recognition. So that is it from me. I don't know what is your opinion about this. Please comment down in the comment section and tell us your opinion. What is your opinion? Do you really believe the lady, or are you in agreement with what those other guys are kind of saying and telling her, reacting to her video? Please don't forget to subscribe to this channel, like this video, and also share. Let's meet in our next video. Goodbye.